Update. Disowned for exposing my sister's affair. Now my family is begging for money after 7 years. Original post. Growing up, my older sister Jess was the golden child in our family. Everything she did was perfect in our parents' eyes. She was the star student, the one who always received praise, and the one everyone in the family admired. I was the younger sister who lived in her shadow, always feeling like I was second best. No matter what I did, I could never measure up to Jess. It didn't help that Jess had this magnetic personality that made everyone gravitate toward her. She was the life of every party, the girl everyone wanted to be friends with, and the daughter who could do no wrong. My parents doted on Jess and gave her everything she wanted. When she decided to open her own boutique, they didn't hesitate to support her financially. My dad emptied a good chunk of his savings to help her set up her store, while my mum spent countless hours helping Jess with everything from interior design to managing the finances. I was roped into helping as well, though I did it more out of obligation than enthusiasm. I was proud of Jess for starting her own business, but a part of me resented the fact that our parents had never shown the same level of support for my aspirations. Despite the facade of being the perfect family, there were cracks beneath the surface. Jess had a wild side that our parents chose to ignore. While she was charming and sweet in front of others, she could be manipulative and cruel behind closed doors. She was used to getting her way and would stop at nothing to achieve her goals. She had a string of boyfriends throughout high school and college, each one more infatuated with her than the last. But Jess had a habit of losing interest quickly, and she always moved on to the next guy without a second thought. Things took a turn when Jess met her fiancé, a wealthy and successful man who was completely smitten with her. He came from a prominent family, and our parents were over the moon when they found out he was planning to propose. They saw this as the perfect match for Jess, and they couldn't wait for the wedding. Everything seemed perfect on the outside, but I knew my sister better than anyone. I could tell she wasn't as invested in the relationship as she pretended to be. She enjoyed the attention and the gifts, but I could see the boredom in her eyes when she was with him. Then, one day, everything changed. Jess's boutique had been struggling for a while, and she was under a lot of stress. She had been taking out loans to keep the business afloat, and our dad had been bailing her out each time she fell behind on payments. But the financial pressure was getting to her, and she started acting out. She became more irritable, snapping at everyone around her. She started spending more time away from home, claiming she needed to focus on her business. But I knew better. Jess had always been good at lying, but she couldn't fool me. One evening, I decided to pay her a surprise visit at the boutique. I wanted to check in on her and see how she was doing. But when I arrived, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Jess was in the back of the store, locked in a passionate embrace with a man who was definitely not her fiancé. They were so wrapped up in each other that they didn't even notice me standing there. I quickly backed away, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. Jess was cheating on her fiancé, and she didn't even seem to care about the consequences. I drove home in a daze, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to confront Jess and demand an explanation, but another part of me knew it wouldn't make a difference. Jess had always been self-centered, and I knew she would just brush me off if I tried to talk to her about it. But the thought of her betraying her fiancé, who genuinely cared for her, made me sick to my stomach. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't get the image of Jess and that man out of my head. Every time I saw her, I felt a mix of anger and disappointment. She was carrying on with her life as if nothing had happened, still playing the role of the perfect fiancé. Our parents were oblivious, still fawning over Jess and her upcoming wedding. They had no idea what was really going on, and I knew it would break their hearts if they found out. But I also knew I couldn't keep this to myself. Jess needed to be held accountable for her actions, and her fiancé deserved to know the truth. A few days later, Jess invited me over for dinner. Her fiancé and his parents were coming over and she wanted everything to be perfect. As usual, our parents were busy fussing over every little detail, making sure the house was spotless and the food was just right. Jess was in her element, charming everyone with her wit and grace. But I could see through the act. I could see the guilt lurking beneath the surface, even if no one else could. As we sat down for dinner, I could feel the tension building inside me. I kept glancing at Jess, waiting for the right moment to speak up. The conversation was light and pleasant, with everyone laughing and enjoying themselves. But I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to come crashing down. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I put down my fork and took a deep breath. "There's something I need to say," I began, my voice trembling slightly. Everyone turned to look at me, their smiles fading as they sensed the seriousness of my tone. Jess shot me a warning glance, but I ignored her. I had to do this. I couldn't let her continue living a lie. "Jess, I saw you with someone else the other day," I said, my voice steadying as I spoke. "I saw you with another man at your store. You were cheating on your fiancé." The room fell silent, and I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me. Jess' fiancé looked confused, while his parents exchanged uneasy glances. My parents were staring at me in shock, unable to comprehend what I had just said. Jess tried to recover, but it was too late. The damage was done. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her face flushing with anger and embarrassment. "You must have seen something wrong. I would never cheat on him." But her words rang hollow and no one was buying it. Her fiancé turned to her, his expression a mix of hurt and disbelief. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jess hesitated, and in that moment, everyone knew the truth. Her fiancé's face crumpled as the realization hit him. He had been betrayed by the woman he loved, the woman he was planning to spend the rest of his life with. His parents were livid, demanding an explanation from Jess, but she was too stunned to respond. Eventually, she broke down, tears streaming down her face as she admitted to the affair. She swore it was the first time, that it didn't mean anything, but the damage was already done. Her fiancé was devastated, and his parents were furious. They stormed out of the house, leaving Jess in tears and my parents glaring at me. I had expected them to be angry, but I hadn't anticipated the level of vitriol that followed. My parents were livid, accusing me of ruining Jess's life and destroying her future. They couldn't believe I would betray my own sister like that. "How could you do this to her?" my mother screamed, her voice shaking with fury. "You've ruined everything." Jess's wedding was called off, and she became the subject of gossip in our social circle. Everyone knew what had happened, and no one was on her side. The boutique, which had been struggling, went bankrupt shortly after. Jess had taken out too many loans that she couldn't repay, and my dad couldn't keep up with her financial demands. The stress took its toll on him, and he eventually fell into debt. Their once comfortable lifestyle crumbled, and they were forced to sell the house to pay off the debts. As for me, I was ostracized by my family. They blamed me for everything that had gone wrong in Jess's life. I was no longer welcome at family gatherings, and my parents made it clear that they wanted nothing to do with me. I was hurt, but I didn't regret what I had done. Jess needed to face the consequences of her actions, and I couldn't let her continue living a lie. 7 years passed, and I built a life of my own far away from my family. I had a stable job, good friends, and a sense of peace that I had never known before. But Jess's life continued to spiral downward. Her relationships fell apart. Her financial situation worsened, and she became increasingly isolated. My parents, who had always favoured her, found themselves struggling as well. Without the safety net of their wealth, they were forced to downsize and live a more modest lifestyle. They lost the respect of their peers, and their once close-knit social circle dwindled. Then one day, I received a call from my mother. Her voice was strained, and I could tell she was on the verge of tears. "We need your help," she said, her voice trembling. "We're in trouble and we don't know what to do." I listened as she explained how they were on the verge of losing their home and how Jess had drained their finances with her reckless spending. My parents were desperate, and they had nowhere else to turn. I just sat there, listening to her plead for help, feeling a mixture of emotions. Part of me wanted to help them, to mend the broken relationships and be there for my family. But another part of me remembered the pain they had caused me, the years of neglect and favoritism that had driven us apart. In the end, I knew I couldn't let them drag me back into their chaos. I had worked too hard to build a life of my own, and I wasn't willing to sacrifice that for people who had never valued me. "I'm sorry, Mum," I said, my voice firm, "but I can't help you. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." She started to cry, but I didn't waver. I knew it was the right decision. They had chosen to stand by Jess no matter how many mistakes she made. Now they had to face the consequences. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of closure. I had finally let go of the past and was ready to move forward. My family had made their choices and I had made mine. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. My reaction for OP. OP. Why couldn't you have had a private word with your sister instead? Now for the updates. Update 1. Thank you, fellow editors, for your advice. Here's a few add-ons. I was uneasy. I got a mixed response on my post, so I contacted my aunt, my father's sister, who lives a block away from my parents. I've always been in moderate touch with her ever since I moved out. Aunt usually fills me in on the drama going on there. It was long ago that she told me about Dad being guilty of mistreating me and wanting to mend fences. But my mum was still Team Jess and deterred him from contacting me. I know my dad is a peacemaker and he wouldn't want to ruin the peace of his house by having me back. Aunt told me Dad stopped paying off the mortgage for the boutique after Jess's cheating came out. He had already paid for more than half of it until then. He asked her to pay the remaining, but she faltered and it was put up for auction. Obviously, she couldn't secure it. Karma is a beautiful thing. After her breakup, she found herself a new sugar daddy to fund her lavish lifestyle. But, surprise, surprise, her cheating ways caught up with her again, and he dumped her too. Meanwhile, my mum was still blindly supporting Jess, never once calling her out for her mistakes because she was also freeloading the stuff she got from her boyfriends and dad. Now that he's sick and couldn't work and bring in money, they don't even care about him. It's like karma's come full circle. He never supported me or took my side, so I couldn't care less about him now. He made his bed and now he's lying in it. After a month, I got to know that Mum had dumped Dad into a filthy care facility. They had defaulted on the insurance premium for a year, hence their coverage had dropped significantly. And now they have to sponsor a large portion of the surgery by themselves. Obviously, she cannot afford it. Or maybe she doesn't want to waste the money on his treatment. I felt bad. I just couldn't make peace with letting him die while I had the means to save him. So I went to meet him. He broke down on seeing me. He cried, hugged me and apologized. He told me Mum never visited him after dumping him there. I took him out of there and got him admitted to a decent healthcare facility and paid for his treatment. Mum and Jess somehow got to know and visited the hospital. Dad chased them away and told Mum he would deal with her once he got back on his feet. Jess maintained her distance from me, but Mum tried to talk to me, thanking me for stepping up and taking responsibility. I turned my back towards her and pretended she didn't exist. Dad got discharged 3 weeks ago and he's doing well. I sometimes check on him, but the conversation is still cold on my side. I told him that since he raised me, I owed him this much, but now he shouldn't expect anything else from me. Neither do I want to be in touch. He respects my boundaries and said he would like to work on our relationship, but obviously at my pace. I'm yet to decide on that. That's it until now. I'll update if anything significant rolls up. Update 2. Oh, I have some spice. So, as Dad promised, the first thing he did after getting back on his feet was to abandon Mum. He sold the house right under her nose, packed his stuff in an RV and silently left. Mum was visiting Jess during this time, and when she came back, he was gone. Soon she got the notice to vacate the house as it no longer belonged to them. She panicked and went to register a missing complaint. But the officers investigated the details and concluded Dad was not missing. He had left by his own choice, so no complaint was registered. Mom was left at Jess's mercy, who herself was living at her boyfriend's place, so naturally, she came to me. As soon as I answered the door, she started howling and apologizing. I had to let her in. I live in an apartment and couldn't let her create a scene. She narrated the details, which I wrote above. It was like, so what? Why me? What happened to your golden child? Why is she not having your back? She started sobbing. Jess is having a tough time making ends meet. Her boutique got shut down, sales took a hit due to short supply. She didn't have money for the inventory, she couldn't pay the mortgage, and everything fell apart. She's somehow holding herself up, but it's impossible for her to take care of me. Okay, so that's why you came knocking at my door, whom you never supported but resented your whole life? She was quick to defend herself. Honey, it was your dad who financially preferred Jess over you. Design school and boutique, yet you paid for his treatment. I've always treated both of you girls equally, yet your words are bitter towards me. If you're angry about that slap, then I'm really sorry. You can't imagine the humiliation we went through after Jess's wedding was called off. I didn't support Jess's cheating. All I wanted from you was to keep quiet until the wedding. But nonetheless, that's the past. Please forgive your mum. I said I didn't need to justify why I paid for Dad's treatment and why I couldn't help her. It's my money and my decision. I told her I wasn't comfortable talking to her, so she'd better leave and not show up at my place ever again. She left after that, saying sorry. Later, I got to know that she's now working at a salon. Well, good for her that she finally realised the importance of getting back on her feet. Just a couple of days ago, I got to know that Jess had been kicked out by her boyfriend because she was found cheating again. Once a cheater, always a cheater, you know? She came to Mum for help, but this time she got thrashed out. Mum herself is surviving out of a friend's garage, and how could Jess expect help from her? Apparently, Mum lashed out at Jess, saying that she was the reason Dad left and why I hated them. After that, Jess called me from a new number. She was crying and wanted me to pitch in, but I hung up without even letting her complete her sentence. I blocked her number. She then sent me a long email pinning the blame on Mum for enabling her toxic behaviour. She was like, I wasn't born this way. Our parents made me so. Why couldn't they teach me morals and values? They spoon-fed me. Now they both suddenly abandoned me to fend for myself. How unfair it is. They could have taught me self-dependence as they taught you. If you think you've suffered because of their bias, you're wrong. I've suffered. See my life and yours? I'm still dependent on others. Hopping from one shoulder to another, but see yourself. Please help me put my life together. Please help me. Her email was heartwarming, wasn't it? What do you guys think I did after reading it? That's right, I deleted it and blocked her. I know she's very good at manipulation. How else do you think she manages to get rich men to shower their hard-earned money on her? Yes, beauty is one enabler, but she's good with her words too. And maybe with other stuff as well. I care the least for her, my mother, or even my father. I paid for the surgery because I felt I owed him for bringing me into this world and raising me. That's it. I have suffered immense mental torture because of them. It took me years to heal. There's no way I'm going to disrupt my peace for them.